so happy we alive.
Wow.
Well, that's...
Flying, you know, I read more Power Ranger Wild, but I mean, Ron Rosenbaum, you know? I mean, you're never supposed to say that, you know?
The man known by his initials.
You know,
It's like
really some great writers. I'm just very proud. That's what I'm really most proud of High Times, is that there's a real great history of great writers. Victor Bacchus is another great writer who worked for High Times, and, you know, was out of the Warhol scene, and, you know, I've gotten to meet him, and so you do have that connection to some of the guys who were there back in the old days. Every once in a while, and you can get the stories and infuse, you know, the history a little bit, you know. So not too many of them out there we get to see, but a few, you know, you get to.
Is there anything in the history of High Times, any unusual situations that have developed over the years, or
In what respect?
oh, just anything that might come to mind as you look back over the years of producing the magazine? It's definitely a creative production.
Of course. I mean, it's gone through a lot of changes. I mean, a thumbnail history of the magazine is that started in 1974. Tom Forsad started it, and he's a yippie activist. And,
He's sort of half revolutionary and half outlaw hustler, basically.
Right.
Wasn't he a cult person to an extent?
No, not really.
I don't know if you call him, no, it's not like
He's
this.
like, he sort of has his own place, like a Larry Flint or a Hugh Hefner or a Bob Guccione, you know. He's got his own place in the firmament of magazine.
So in 1971...
74 he started that, but he had already started a bookstore in Soho, and he had started the Underground Press Syndicate, and was involved. He had a series of books, High Times books, back in 1972 on every particular drug, little small books. But anyway, magazine, kind of came out in June of '74 and was a quarterly for 2 years. Or am I wrong? It was a quarterly, for '74 and '75, and by '76 it went. I think the Bob Marley September '76 is when it went monthly, and been monthly ever since. And so, magazine had really a boom time right then. It was the paraphernalia era, a lot of advertising. There were no regulations really stopping a lot of it until they started to regulate it.
Which was like '79.
Well, the big shakedown on paraphernalia, kind of affected the magazine. Shortly after that boom period. Tom Forsad died in 1978. He was manic depressive, and he took his own life. And so the magazine was left in a trust, and was carried on from that point on. And the 80s were a harsh time for the magazine. And I think Tom's death really kind of sent the thing spiraling downwards for a while, despite the fact there were still good people there doing good work. But the magazine, I think, in the early '80s really, went down. Like if High Times was like pretty, went up pretty quickly, it kind of started to fall off pretty fast. And by '84, it was, I think, at its low point circulation-wise. And I don't know, 85, 86, around that time, Hager came in and Holmstrom and a whole new staff started coming in, the late '80s staff that included me, and Steve came in the early '90s, and
Peter Gorman.
Peter Gorman's there since the late '80s, like myself, and so the current staff that's kind of grown up. So I mean, a thumbnail sketch of like where we've been, But there was a big thing that happened during, my year at the magazine was 1990 with the Operation Green Merchant, which went after the magazine and our advertisers, and another magazine like High Times sent some tips, and there was a real campaign by the government to try and harass us, get us out of the business, run us out, do whatever the fuck they were trying to do. And they did run our advertisers out, and did make us go another direction for advertising. And
When was this?
that was 1990, Operation Green Merchant.
Uh-huh.
You know, and that went on for a while in the early 90s. You know, several phases of it, but they went after stores that were advertising in High Times.
Was this a national or a New York?
National. It was a national sting. It was right after October. It was like it was a black something.
Who was responsible for that?
The DNA.
Anybody in particular?
I don't know. I didn't, well, yeah, but I mean, under his aegis, but it's some, you know, it was something else. They were just trying to shut down. They were trying to shut down. Well, a couple of things. They were trying to shut down the seed industry, which was coming from Holland. And companies were advertising High Times, and seeds were being brokered into America. And they wanted to, you know, shut down the indoor growing operation. You know, where you could buy equipment and stuff, and there were a lot of advertisements in High Times for those companies with hydro systems and lights and, you know, so on. So they went after all them, and, you know, a lot of them, you know, some of them did some time even, and we, you know, really haven't been without those advertisers for a long time, and so we had to sort of look elsewhere.
So did that set the magazine back substantially then?
Well, pages-wise, it certainly did, because I remember when I started the magazine, we were at 96, and we went down to 80 or something, and we're up at 136 now. So I mean, count the pages. You know, that'll tell you how, you know, where we're at. You know, that we've come a long way from Green Merchant, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's like the rings on a tree, you know, it's like, you look at the rings on a tree stump and the thick ones, there must have been a lot of rain that year, and the thin ones.
This is the biggest the magazine's been, you know, since the late 70s. That's why I feel like we're part of like this, you know, this era, kind of second golden era of High Times. You know, the first golden era was our original era of the magazine, the 70s. We can't top that. That was a great era. I don't think we're even going to do a 175-page issue sometime, you know, like they did, you know. Like the double Christmas issue with Truman Capote.
When pot gets legalized, you know, the legalization issue, that's going to be like a big
That's true.
You know, I don't know if pot's going to be legalized. I think there's cracks going to appearing in the wall of prohibition, but I think, you know, there's a lot of fight left in the beast, and you know, it's people who are more powerful than us, so you should never underestimate your enemy. I mean, you don't want to overestimate.
Yeah, once had dreams. Once we could. We had a life. It felt so good. Once had trust. Knew my friends. I thought good guys. When in the end, times have changed. Behind my masks, maggot flies. Yeah, the great pretender stole the throne. Yeah, and I'm hungry now for blood and bone. We'll never find. I got this bloody axe tonight. Creeping darkness, shadows grow. Our worst fears. Now we know, through creeping darkness.